His dad was a big Cubs fan, and when he was like 3, he would wake his dad up and he would either ask him to play baseball in the backyard, or he'd make him put the Kerry Wood game in the VCR, and he would just sit the 3-year-old down, and he'd watch Kerry Wood's 20 strikeout performance over and over and over again. So last year in LA, he told me that story. And it was the weekend after Kerry had gone in the Hall of Fame, and I said, did you tell him that? Did you get a chance to meet him? He said, yeah, I met him. I didn't tell him that though. He said, look, this weekend is about him, it's not about me. And to me, that shows a maturity and kind of a vision of what culture is about that is pretty sophisticated for somebody that age. So what I would ask you is, do you solve for culture? And how do you solve for culture?
I think the question there is, in what context are you solving for culture, right? Like in the acquisition space, I think you can get a little bit in trouble if you're acquiring for culture, because you might be acquiring, I think I'm a great guy, awful baseball player. Like, go look at my stats from college. Like, if you're solving for culture there, like you're gonna end up with Carter Hawkins as your backup catcher. Not a good idea. But in terms of the development space, in terms of what we teach our players, in terms of how we want the environment to be in our major league clubhouse, like you absolutely have to solve for culture there. And the best part about that is when you do that, you create this environment that you can bring counterculture people into and have them assimilate in a way that they help the players around them be better versions of themselves. And that's what we're solving for that, right? And so I would rather bring in a talented player and help put him into an environment that is able to bring the best out of them than go and try to get players that are culture guys that might not have that talent. And it's tough. There's a nuance to that, but I think that's what we're always trying to play through.
I was gonna say, one of the fun things about the job, I think, and I've learned this the hard way over a lot of time, is that every year is different. You got the exact same people, bring back the exact same team. There's no way the culture will be the same, which sounds odd, but it's true. That like whatever things happen, whether it's injuries, whatever ups and downs you face, whatever things guys are going through in their personal life, whatever that might be, the culture's never the same. And so you have to go into every season. Every season is an opportunity to build a great culture within a team. And if you have a year where you have an amazing culture, it doesn't mean that like those same people are going to have a great culture the next year. One random anecdote on that is I remember in 2015 we were still in the old clubhouse, and Joe had this thing where like we wanted to celebrate every win like it was the World Series. So every single game we won was just like water and everything thrown everywhere, and it was mayhem after every win. And it was a dance party in the clubhouse, and that was the thing. So when we were designing the new clubhouse, we put in like a room basically, so we would remove the carpets every night. And there was like rubber floors, they had strobe lights, they had a fog machine, they had all this stuff to do it. And we put it on the first game, and like, that was last year's skit. And it was like, oh, like, that was last year, this is this year, we have to find our own thing this year. And so I just think to myself, like, you have to build the culture through development, and you have to pick the right people, human beings, and just realize that that culture will be defined over 6 or 7 months, and there's no way to know what that's gonna feel like in spring training. And I think that's
And you had to fix the culture with our facilities guys, that you had said, hey, we're gonna build this room. They said, there's a lot of square footage. No, this is the most important room ever. And it's like, now it's a new club.
Not anymore.
Yeah, it's a club now, right? Like it's where the W Club is.
No, on the other side, it's where, I don't even know what's there anymore. It's like we have a drum set there or something like that, and it's,
I love the point in terms of how complicated it is to figure out, but just that you could bring back the exact same 25 guys and forget about performance, but you may not get the same type of culture.
Every team that's ever won the World Series had an incredible culture, right? Like they taught, oh my God, this was the group, here are the things that happened, here are the catalysts to this amazing season. Like no one's ever won the World Series and be like, we didn't really like each other, and And then no one's repeated in 20 plus years, right? For a reason, it's hard. So, if you could bottle up that culture and all the things that went with that to win, you do it. It can't be done.
And it's really hard to ID. Like, one of the things that I maintain is that it just stands to reason by logic. There are a ton of 81 and 81 teams that had amazing culture. You just had good enough pitching or good enough hitting. But we don't ID it or talk about that very much. Nobody talks about the 78 win team that's like, yeah, we were a little short in the bullpen and whatever, but our culture, our chemistry is amazing.
Yeah, it looks like I would say the last couple of years we had amazing guys in the clubhouse that were unbelievably resilient, that cared about each other, that invested in each other. We won 83 games, and that's not enough, right? And so, like, end of the day, we want to continue to be resilient. We want to continue to be connected. We want to continue to have open minds. We want to continue to make sure that we're investing in one another. Yes, we will always pound that rock, 100%. But we're solving for wins, right? So, let's talk about how can we make sure that we give ourselves the best shot to win the most amount of games we possibly can to give you guys what we deserve.
Jed, by the way, don't worry. I will get a copy of the clip of Carter saying, "I think I'm a great guy," and we'll just splice it together over and over again for you.
Yeah, there's AI type stuff that we can do with that we can, we have a lot of fun with that.
I do not like where this is going.
Pass it along to Lindsay, everything will be great. All right, we're gonna do some questions here. We'll start over there to the right. Question for Jed and Carter.
Jed, I mean, the question I have, after the 2020 season, the Cubs let go a lot of scouts. Now here we are in 2024, and you continue to let go of people in the scouting department. And the scouting department was told they wouldn't be scouting any games except in the Dominican Summer League and the Complex League. Why does the organization continue to use less and less scouting, and do you feel that the scouts in the organization feel valued?
That's a great question. I think that the game and the way we gather information has evolved significantly. We've made a lot of significant changes in how we do that and how we deploy our people. When I think about when I started in the game, the amount of video we had was negligible. We had very little information on players and pitchers, especially. Now every pitched ball, we have every piece of information you can imagine. Every hit ball, we have every piece of information. We have so much video. We have 8 camera angles on every at bat that happens during the course of the season. So the process of gathering information is as important as ever, but how we gather that information is completely different. So having scouts fly all over the country and using the resources that way to go to games where we have all the information from that games makes less sense. Having those same people or a group of people sort of watching video and gathering information in different ways makes more sense. And so, we're not the first team to evolve in this way. I think you have to evolve. The way to gather information is always changing. And I think that the power of information is just as much as ever. It's just how we gather that information is different.
And I want to do a quick follow-up on that too. Jed and I, we love our jobs. There's a lot of awesome things, but there's a lot of really hard decisions that we have to make that are not enjoyable, and the hardest decisions that we have to make have to do with our people. And so it is not lost upon us that when we have to make decisions about our process that affect people, that it stinks. It is, and it especially stinks for those people. But we are tasked to try to make sure that we're making the best decisions to win the most baseball games. And that is always the guiding principle for us. We care about our people. It hurts when we have to make those tough ones. But to Jed's point on the why behind it, scouting is looking for unique and accurate information, period. And there's less unique information in AAA, AA, High A, Low A, because all that information is coming in. And so that's why when we thought about, okay, we all have resource constraints. How do we allocate our resources most effectively? Taking it away from spots where we no longer can get unique information makes sense.
I like that, unique and accurate information. That's good. I consider that stolen. Let's go over to this side for a question.
So So with Nico being hurt, who's going to be the second baseman, and what are the chances that you're going to sign Alex Bregman?
I mean, did you talk to Nico? Did you talk to Nico yesterday? Did you see him? When you talk to him, ask him if he's hurt. Because I think, look, like Nico is about as tough of a guy as we have in the organization, if not the toughest. We watched the athleticism of him last night with some of those highlights, just unbelievable. He's going to do everything he possibly can to be ready for opening day. We got a lot of great depth that's going to be able to help us out if that's not the case. But I think if you went and told him, what are you going to do since you're not going to be here for opening day, he's going to stare right through you. And I will defer the other question to Jen.
Jen, the other question was, are you going to sign Alex Bregman?
What's that? I mean, listen, you guys know I can't comment on individual free agents. I appreciate it.
There you go. All right, back to the other side. Let's put a question over here, please.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for being here. The Cubs Blue had 26 blown saves last year, and they were second to last in Major League Baseball and lost leads. The year before, they had quite a few blown saves as well. Are you guys ever going to sign a high-end, high-leverage, back of the bullpen pitcher to a multi-year contract?
Listen, it's undeniable. Like last year, and in really the second half of the year before, we struggled in high leverage, and that's something that we have to address, and we've been looking to address. In general, my focus is usually on how do we build a bullpen internally, how do we find sort of hidden gems to come out, and listen, I think we've had a lot of success with that. The last year wasn't that year, but yeah, we've talked to dozens of relievers this offseason, and I'm not going to tip my hand about what we're going to do in free agency, but I appreciate the question, and what you're saying is not lost on us. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Let's go over here.
So one of the top 10 draft picks this year's name is Brendan Summerhill. He went here with Young in Chicago. So I'm curious if you're interested in signing him.
So, short answer is if he's a top 10 guy and if he's able to help us, we're going to want to try to bring him into the organization. The longer answer is the way the draft process works, we'll learn so much about each draft class over the next, over the next 6-7 months. And the draft list, where our draft list is today, is going to be totally different than where it is 6 months from now. So we're always like looking at these lists and we're like, oh, like where do you think these guys would fit in? And then 6 months later, everything has changed. But I'll say that we'll definitely have our eye on him, and we'll definitely do everything we can to get as much unique and accurate information about him as we can to make great decisions.
As far as the draft, has it changed since you guys entered baseball, the way you look at specifically first-round picks, that they can impact the team more quickly, or that you hope they might impact the team more quickly than, say, 15 years ago?
I think he's moved to where guys definitely have gotten called up a little bit quicker. I think some of the incentives that the new CBA or the newest CBA put in place, where there's draft pick compensation if you bring a rookie up, it's in the top 100. If you bring him up and he gets a full year of service and he wins particular awards, you can get draft pick compensation for that. Like that has changed the incentive structure for front offices. So I think that's opened up a little bit of a pathway for some of the elite players that Bobby Wicks of the world, as Jen mentioned earlier. So yeah, I think that's there. I do think teams have realized 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there's this thought, hey, we can go get a reliever and get him up to the big leagues ASAP. That really never worked out for teams. And so we're always looking for really good players at really reasonable salaries, and the draft is one way to do that, is the way to do that. And I do think we're moving players quicker than we ever have. But at the end of the day, we're still solving for the same thing, which is how do we accrue the most wins out of this draft pool? And we do that over and over again. Like this city's gonna be pretty exciting.
Let's go back over here.
Hey guys, so unfortunately Boog stole part of my question.
I'm a Thunder stealer.
So I was going to ask about park factor, so I guess I have to be more specific now. Considering park factor, Jed, in your press conference, you talked about how Wrigley was kind of like a dead zone this year. And so when you're evaluating players, is there any specific thing that you kind of look at to see like, oh, this guy might be able to negate any sort of park factor effect at Wrigley, negative or positive? Like how the Yankees look for a left-hander with Polk.
So we look a lot at, anytime we're acquiring a player, we'll kind of we'll look at their batted ball profile within our ballpark and see how it's affected. But in all seriousness, like when I worked at the Red Sox, for example, it pretty much plays the same every year, and it's a really short left field wall, and you can factor that in really simply. I've found that Wrigley isn't good players because every year it plays completely different. Every series it plays different. So, the idea of having like a type of hitter or a type of pitcher, I think you just need really good players and realize that there's going to be years where we're going to be in the bottom 10 in park factor. There's going to be years where we're going to be at the top, and there's no real way to go about that. And so, in some ways, it kind of frees you up. Like I said, we'll always look at the batted ball profile. Really does favor right-hand hitters over left-hand hitters, and that's undeniable. But in general, mentally, I'm sort of freed by Wrigley. Just focus on good players and not focus on the wind or the weather because we can't control that.
I think one thing to follow up on that question, so I very rarely will read the blogs or the comments or whatever. When we got Isak, there's a lot of like, didn't they realize that Tampa's got a really short porch and where his home runs go, it's not going to be as effective as Wrigley. Like, he's got a bunch of idiots. And it's like, maybe. But we did look at that, but what we also looked at is the foul territory for each of those different parts. And if for Isak particularly, he hit a lot of foul balls that were outs in Tampa that would have been foul balls for him at Wrigley. And that's factored in as well. So there's a lot of like, okay, what happens to the fair balls? I think the thing that doesn't happen a lot is what happens to the foul balls, and that plays into some of where we protect from.
Can you give me a general, speaking of park factor, look, last year it was extreme, and there's obviously going to be variance. How has the park changed since the refurbishing? So since the scoreboards went in, and there's even less foul territory because the bullpens got taken off the field, how has it changed, or has it changed?
More pop-ups are going to foul territory. I was going to say, the one thing I always try to think about that I think is lost in the park factors a little bit, when I think about Paredes and how he played, for example, with us last year, I think he was unbelievable on the road when we had him last year. His numbers were amazing, and he really struggled at home. I can't think of that many balls that he snap hook down the line or outs. And one of the things, we talked to Ian Happ about it, or talked to Michael Bush about it, like, there's a mentality thing. When you're standing on the tee box and the wind's blowing straight in your face, there's a mental impact. And I do think guys, it wears on them. And our hitters mentally, it grinds on them if every day they're playing in the wind. And so I think that's one of the challenges. I felt that when I was in San Diego, Petco was this unbelievable graveyard that no one could score. And part of that was the park factor, and part of it was mentally. Guys looking up at the scoreboard and they're hitting a $192 and like that. So I do think that is a part of the park factor mentally. I think playing at a really difficult place to hit over and over and over. Unfortunately, players, they're human. Everyone says, trust the process. You find out the warning factor. It's no big deal. That's hard mentally over and over and over. And I do think that wears on guys.
But I do think people are like, well, why don't you just get guys that can be able to counteract the wind blowing in? It's like, well, that's great, but then what happens if the wind starts blowing out? It's like if you can predict the weather, then yeah, we'll do that. But you have to figure that one out.
We can do that. We'll make money some other way.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm coming with you guys. Patrick Wisdom is a guy, just off the top of my head, and this is just anecdotally, but over the last 3 years, he slaughtered more balls into the wind at 28 degrees, 112 miles an hour. It was incredible. I mean,
The one against the Cardinals last year was
down the line.
Throw your hands up in the air. I mean, that was a take the lead home run in the 8th inning, and it was about 112 miles an hour. Those things happen, but I mean, Soto and Stanton hit balls. It felt like they hit balls that were going to hit a street, and those balls were caught. So I think it does even out.
Were you surprised that Soto got the money that he got?
Kind of low, I thought. You know.
Well played. Can I sneak in one quick one on the deferrals? Is that something we're going to see more of? Is that just a Dodger thing mainly? What's your take on that?
I assume that we'll continue to see it. I mean, the Dodgers are not the only team to do it. They do it at a really large scale, so I think it's talked about more. But I think if you looked at a lot of different contracts within the league, almost every team does it to some extent. There's different ways to defer money. There's kind of the traditional way to do it, where you have a $10 million salary, but you pay $5 million, 20 years from now. And then there's other ways where guys have these mutual option structures that end up kicking money out, and that's just a way to kind of balance the books for teams as they're looking at their budget cycles. But long and short of it is, it's something that certainly players seem open to because they get more money overall, and the teams are open to because if you're able to invest the money that you're deferring, because you have to fund that money early on, if you're able to invest that, make money off of it at a higher rate than what you have to invest it at to reach all the different rules that MLB has, like you end up making money off of it.
Yeah, just to clarify what he was saying, like if a team defers money, they have to fund it into an escrow account with MLB. They have to basically tell MLB where that money is. So now they can do that at a present value. So like rough math, like the Dodgers are paying Ohtani $70 million a year. I think every year in July 1st or something like that, they have to fund probably somewhere in the $44-45 million range. So when you defer money, you can't just not pay it until that point. You have to pay an amount at that point, but it's a lesser amount.
But I do think they put that in the video, right? Like, and all of a sudden they're up 1,000%. 10 years from now, they're going to be feeling pretty good about it.
Stock tips. Our guy. Thanks for doing this. Enjoyed it once again. Did you warm up?
You're jumping jacks now.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate you guys. Again, thanks for joining us, everyone. And we appreciate